consult, engage, inspire. This is what I'm talking about. This is about you as citizens having an important voice in the future of your city. And I think, I understand that the council will be holding more smaller and localised community engagement, which is really, really critical, because it's really important to think of an idea, go over it in your head, play with it in a different way, but keep engaging and keep consulting and keep inspiring. You need to get to a point where you have to figure out what it is that you want, though. So you have to figure out what your priorities are. And you know, I think there has been a target set in terms of that. Be aspirational. Somebody said to me, they need to be better than what they were. And I think you have an opportunity to do something quite different. And I think that there is, this is kind of partly about figuring out your place in this area, this region. You're figuring out your place in New Zealand, but also figuring out your place in the world. How do you create a world-class city that will attract other people? So how do you get, you know, there's a lot of people that have left, but how do you get new people to also come to Christchurch? What are all the really good reasons that people would want to come and live here? So you have, it's beholden on you as a residential population to also plan for that future. I've said build new ways to work, and what I mean by that is that partnerships. This is not just about government telling you what to do. This is not about businesses dictating economic terms, and this is not just about residents saying you want a particular building or not. This is about working together in partnership, and I think that somebody somewhere has got to work out how you get those groups of people together effectively so that you achieve an effective outcome. Check your progress. This is a slight sort of sideways one about if you create a checklist, if you like. This reminds you of the important things, because you know there are going to be so many imperatives that you have to keep in your mind, that creating a checklist or using rating tools are a really good way of making sure that you've covered across all the important pieces. Insist on leadership. This is a redundant one now. I am deeply impressed that you are very lucky. I feel that you're very lucky. You have Roger Sutton now. And I think that's a great achievement. I'm extremely pleased. I'm going to be a little bit cheeky because I asked to meet Jerry Brownlee this morning. And, well, I asked to meet Jerry Brownlee a few days ago. And it was the announcement about Roger Sutton was made. And I thought, I don't need to worry about it now because Roger Sutton's going to be there. So I think you're very lucky to have Roger Sutton leading CERA. I think it will be fantastic, and I think possibly you will also have these new ways of working because he's been in business, because it's a government department. So I think you have a positive leadership there. Be part of the future. My final piece is that I don't have first experience. I imagine that many of you are tired and dispirited and fed up with the Portaloos, but you are also on the cusp of an amazing opportunity. And so I guess there's an element of patience and how you create personal space that will work in this interim period, but also know that you are part of a longer term, bigger future. And I think it's really important that you as citizens are the critical voice in that. So good luck going forwards.
Excellent. Thank you, Alex. All right, question time. We'll get Jenny up those stairs. We'll start at the top end. Keep going up. We'll work our way down. Yep.
Hello. I recently built a house, and one of the critical problems is not just we wanted to build a house which was a greenhouse, but you're up against it from the word go, because architects, not all architects, but many of them, and the builders haven't a clue what you mean by a greenhouse. And it seems to me that if we're going to rebuild Christchurch, we don't only just have to teach people how to drive nails and make square joints. We've got to teach them how to make green buildings, and that means teaching all the old fogies that are out there, have been doing it for 30 years and are not going to change if they can possibly help it. What can we do about it?
Okay, that's a great question. Thank you for asking such a nice question. I mentioned Homestar. Homestar was literally only just launched in November, and part of Homestar is about upskilling the building and construction industry to be able to build green homes. And what happened was that in the beginning of February, we had an industry launch, if you like. So it's a launch about Homestar to industry and how they can use it as a service provider, how they can work with homeowners to try and get across the message about energy efficiency, health, comfort. And then what happened was the 22nd of February, and we never did the industry launch here in Christchurch, and we never did the industry launch in Wellington. So on the 1st of June, literally a few weeks' time, we are doing an industry launch here in Christchurch at a place called Pepper's Clearwater Resort. 1st of June, 8 o'clock in the morning. Anybody in industry who wants to know about Homestar and how it's useful, we are doing that launch now. We're finally getting around to it. So that's the beginning of helping to inform industry about how to build greenhouses. We also do a whole load of courses that people can come on, so people can learn how to build greenhouses, if you like. We do have a website. Our Homestar is the consumer end, if you like. So if you're a homeowner, Homestar is the one that you should go for. Actually, I think that's my website up there. NZGBC, New Zealand Green Building Council.org.nz has all the courses on there about how to learn about how to be a Homestar practitioner.
Okay, next question. Yep, sir. To your right, Jenny.
Thank you. I was rather surprised that you were so very relieved at Roger Sutton being appointed the boss of Sarah. Wouldn't somebody with an architectural, urban design, town planning background have been more suitable?
It's kind of interesting, not being in Christchurch. I think you get quite a different perspective of what's going on the ground here. And somebody said to me, it's really important that when you are thinking about how you rebuild Christchurch, that you have these pockets of experts who can give you advice, but the most important role will be how it gets facilitated, how it gets put together in a process. And the impression that I get is that he will be really great at putting together a process. He sounds like you want to respond to that. I don't know. I haven't seen his CV, I have to confess, but I felt that he has a big presence here, and I think, when I think of some of the possibilities that it could have been, I think it's I think it's a relief. Do you want to give him back the microphone? He wants to respond.
Just very quickly, because we have to move on.
Isn't this the argument that put corporate managers in charge of hospitals? Possibly. I don't know. Listen, I don't know the guy well enough, but I think that there are certain qualities that he's got that seem to be very appropriate to Christchurch, rather than having somebody in Wellington telling you what to do.
All right.
Hello, I'm a building owner in the city, and our buildings will be demolished. And we've just sort of been advised that just to build a standard building on those sites, we're looking at last year's valuation plus 30%, just to build a standard building. So
on those sites?
Yeah.
And why are they saying that, plus 30%?
Well, that's just because there are so many buildings down, that's costs are just going to increase that much.
Yeah.
And that's why they're basing the valuations on.
Yeah.
So, like, green building is very expensive. So how our tenants never used to pay in pounds, and we don't have the budget of the Christchurch City Council to build an enormous building. So a lot of property owners are going to be exactly like me, where they've got buildings which, you're going to have to build something that's economically viable. How would you respond to that?
Okay. I think there is a bit of a myth going around that green buildings have to be more expensive. You're actually talking about principles that you apply to when you're building a building. And if I was being a total purist, I would suggest that right at the beginning, when you decide to build a building, you get the architect, the engineer, the contractor, the client, everybody sitting around the table at the same time to figure out how this is going to work. What often ends up happening is you get an architect designing something, then you get an engineer kind of making up for the mistakes that the architect made, then you've got a contractor saying, well, you can't build it like that because that doesn't really work, and the client saying, but I never wanted that. You've got to get everybody around the table together. So the integrated design is the first thing. Secondly, there are lots of principles, environmentally sustainable principles, that you can apply to a building which will save you money in the longer term. So it depends entirely on the situation, but if you could pay just a little bit more in your capex, but you would have a lower OPEX over a 20-year period, would you not go for that? I think that's a pretty strong economic argument. You do, which is where the wider vision about attracting businesses to Christchurch has to happen. And that's why I thought it was really important that Mary Devine from Ballantyne's was saying, we are staying there. That's where we want to be. You need businesses to say, I am going to relocate to Christchurch because it has a great city centre, because it has great public transport, because it's got happy people who want to be in Christchurch. There's a whole load of items that you can put on that list, and I think it will attract people.